The problem child is fresh off his unanimous decision victory over Anderson Silva in October. The bout was the most back and forth of the YouTuber's career thus far. However, an 8th-round knockdown for Paul sealed his win over the Spider. However, the victory has done very little to quiet the critics of the YouTuber-turned-boxer. As with every fight that Paul competes in comes fight-fixing allegations. Many, including Paddy Pimblett, have called into question his win over the UFC legend. The claim itself is nothing new for Jake Paul. Since his boxing journey began, some fans and fighters have outwardly claimed his matches are rigged. For a while now, the YouTuber has hit back at the idea, but opponents have continued to question the legitimacy of his fights. Now, the YouTuber is ready to poke some fun at the UFC and Dana White over fight-fixing allegations of their own. Earlier today, the promotion announced that any fighter working with James Krause would be unable to compete. The announcement stems from the Derek Minner vs. Shailon Nuerdonbeek fight in November. In that outing, the Glory MMA product famously went down just over a minute into the fight due to a knee injury. As fans later learned, the injury was pre-existing. That, combined with Krause's history as a gambler, and the odds dramatically shifting prior to the fight has led to an investigation from Nevada. For his part, Minner was recently released as well. Along with that, 2 provinces of Canada, Ontario, and Alberta, have stopped accepting UFC wagers. Given the announcements, as well as Paul's own history of being accused of fight-fixing himself, he seems ready to take some shots at Dana White and the MMA promotion. UFC commentator Daniel Cormier understands why Glover Teixeira isn't fighting later this month. The Brazilian has been out of action since UFC 275 in June. In that outing in Singapore, Teixeira looked to make his first title defense against Jiří Procházka. The bout was a back-and-forth one, but it was Denisa who emerged victorious thanks to a 5th-round submission. Following the event, both fighters made their case for a rematch next. Despite the pleas of names such as Jan Blachowicz and Magomed Ankalaev, the promotion set the second encounter for UFC 282. Sadly, fans will have to wait to see the rematch, if they get to see it at all. The newly crowned champion reportedly suffered a brutal shoulder injury late last month and vacated his title. As a result, the UFC offered Teixeira an undisputed title bout against the aforementioned Ankalaev. The Brazilian agreed, but would need more time, and suggested postponing the fight to January. Instead, the UFC decided to slide Jan Blachowicz into the main event. As a result, Glover Teixeira is the man left out, but Daniel Cormier understands the veteran's position. In a recent edition of the DC and RC podcast, the commentator revealed he would have done the same thing. Glover Teixeira said, "I believe that, honestly, I would do the same thing if I was Glover," Cormier said on DC and RC. "It's different. When I was fighting, they told me, as the champ, would you fight Derek Lewis on 3 weeks' notice? Knowing the matchup, I said, sure. Stipe Miocic, I would not have fought on 3 weeks' notice, because it's a different matchup. When I had to fight Anthony Rumble Johnson for the vacant title, God rest his soul, sure, I'll fight Rumble Johnson. When they said Dan Henderson on a few weeks, 6 weeks, 5 weeks, whatever, I wasn't in camp. Sure, because I know the matchup." He continued, Glover Teixeira also understands that if you give him Jan Blachowicz, he's fought him before. He's done training camps for him before. Magomed Ankalaev is an unknown. Nobody really knows what this kid is, especially being that he's so highly regarded. If he was just a young kid that nobody knew that wasn't thought to be a future champion, I think anyone would jump at the opportunity to become champ. Because again, we're talking about a 43-year-old man who has been the UFC champion, who has fought the best of the best. While Glover Teixeira might have the support of DC, the Brazilian isn't sitting around depressed about losing his title shot. He's recently announced his plans to attend the pay-per-view and face the winner of the UFC 282 main event next.